I worked as a senior sales executive for a high-end software firm for 7 years. I was the top performer, and last year, I landed the biggest deal in the company's history, a contract worth $10 million. According to my contract, my commission was 5%, which meant a $500,000 payout. I was planning to buy a house and finally retire my parents. But 2 weeks before the payout, my CEO, Steve, called me into his office. He had a smug smile as he told me they were restructuring the commission model effective immediately. Instead of $500,000, they offered me a flat bonus of $10,000. Steve told me, "Be grateful, it's more than most people make in a year. If you don't like it, there's the door." I didn't scream. I didn't get angry. I just smiled, took the $10,000, and went back to my desk. But Steve forgot one crucial detail. The $10 million client didn't sign because of the company. They signed because of me. I had a personal relationship with their CEO that went back a decade. I also knew that the contract had a key personnel clause. It stated that if I, the lead executive, was no longer managing the account, the client had the right to terminate the contract within 30 days without penalty. I waited exactly 2 weeks. On a Monday morning, I walked into Steve's office and handed in my resignation. He laughed and said, "Good luck finding a job without a reference." I didn't say a word. I walked out, called the client's CEO, and told him exactly how the company had cheated me. 24 hours later, the client triggered the key personnel clause and pulled the $10 million contract. Because the company had already invested millions in hardware for the project, they went into a massive financial tailspin. By the end of the month, the board of directors fired Steve. 2 months later, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I started my own consulting firm, and that same client signed with me on day one. I didn't just get my $500,000, I got the whole business. Never cheat the person who holds your company's future in their hands. I worked as a junior IT specialist for a large manufacturing company. My boss, Greg, was a classic bean counter who hated paying anyone for overtime. Even though I was a junior, I was the only one who lived close to the office, so I often checked on the server room during weekends just to make sure the cooling systems were running. I did this for free because I actually cared about the infrastructure. One Monday, Greg called me in and scolded me for staying 20 minutes late on Friday to cable manage a rack. He told me, and I quote, "From now on, you are to do exactly what is in your job description and not a second more. No extra checks, no staying late, and definitely no remote monitoring. If it's not your shift, it's not your problem." I asked him if he was sure, and he snapped at me, telling me to stop being a hero. So, I decided to follow his orders to the letter. That Saturday, a massive heat wave hit the city. At 2 p.m., I got an automatic alert on my phone showing that the main server room's AC unit had failed. The temperature was climbing fast. Usually, I would have driven over there in 5 minutes and reset the system. But then I remembered Greg's face. Checking the servers on a Saturday was definitely not in my job description. I put my phone on, Do Not Disturb, and went back to my movie. On Monday morning, I walked into total chaos. The heat had been so intense that it fried the primary servers, destroyed the backup drives, and melted the plastic casings on several switches. The total damage, including lost production data, was estimated at $1.2 million. Greg was screaming, asking why I didn't check the alerts. I calmly pulled out my phone and showed him the recording of our meeting from the week before. I told him, "You specifically told me not to do extra checks outside of my shift. Saturday is not my shift." The CEO was standing right behind him. Greg tried to blame me, but the HR department had the written warning Greg had given me about staying within my job description. Greg was fired for negligence and cost-cutting that led to a disaster. I was promoted to senior IT lead with a 40% raise. Sometimes, the best way to deal with a bad boss is to do exactly what they tell you. When my father passed away, he left his house to all three of us, my older brother, my sister, and me. I had been living there for 10 years, taking care of our dad while he was sick. I paid for the repairs, the taxes, and the bills out of my own pocket. My siblings hadn't visited him in years. Immediately after the funeral, they dropped a bombshell. They wanted to sell the house. I begged them to let me stay, offering to pay them rent or buy out the shares over time. But they were greedy. They wanted their cash right now to fund the luxury lifestyles. My sister wanted a new Range Rover, and my brother had gambling debts. They forced a partition sale, meaning the house would be auctioned off to the highest bidder. They thought I was broke because I spent all my money on our dad's medical bills. They treated me like a loser who was about to be homeless. What they didn't know was that our father had a secret life insurance policy that only I knew about. He left it specifically to me, outside of the will, as a thank you for staying with him. It was worth $400,000. On the day of the auction, I used a corporate lawyer to bid on my behalf so they wouldn't recognize me. My siblings were thrilled when the price went up, thinking they were getting rich. I ended up winning the auction, effectively buying the house. The look on their faces a week later was priceless. They showed up at the house to tell me I had 24 hours to pack my bags. I opened the door, handed them legal papers, and said, "Actually, I'm the new owner. And you two are trespassing." Because they had been so cruel during the process, I didn't give them a cent of the insurance money. They got their small share from the house sale, which was quickly swallowed by the debts and taxes. Now, they are blocked on my phone, and I'm sitting in my father's favorite chair, in a house that is finally 100% mine. Greed costs more than you think. I own a high-end boutique catering and events business. Since I like to stay grounded, I often work alongside my staff during big events, wearing the same simple uniform as everyone else. To most people, I just look like another server. Last month, we were handling a massive engagement party for a woman I'll call Karen. From the moment I arrived, she was a nightmare. She snapped her fingers at me, called me useless, and at one point, she actually spilled a glass of red wine on the floor and told me to get on my knees and scrub it, because that's what she paid for. I kept my cool and cleaned it up, but then she took it too far. She started screaming at one of my youngest waitresses, a 19-year-old girl who was doing a great job. Karen called her a stupid peasant, and demanded that the manager fire her immediately. I stepped in and calmly said, "Mom, please lower your voice. She's doing her job." Karen turned red. She screamed, "How dare you speak to me? I want you and this girl gone right now. I know the owner of this company, and I'll make sure you never work in this town again." I smiled and asked, "Oh, you know the owner?" She smirked and said, "Yes, he's a very close friend of mine. Now get out." I took off my service apron, handed it to her, and said, "That's strange, because I'm the owner. And I've never seen you in my life." The silence was incredible. I continued, "Since you've insulted my staff and created a hostile environment, I am officially canceling your contract. Your wedding is in 2 weeks, right? Well, find another caterer. We're done here." Because our contract has a zero-tolerance policy for abuse, I kept her $20,000 deposit. She lost her money and her caterer just days before her wedding. Last I heard, she had to serve fast food at her reception because nobody else was available on such short notice. Kindness is free, but being a Karen is very expensive. I live in a neighborhood with a very strict homeowners association, or HOA. The president, a woman named Martha, treats the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. She spends her days walking around with a ruler, measuring people's grass and issuing fines for the smallest things. Last month, Martha decided she didn't like my front garden. I have a lot of native wildflowers that attract bees and butterflies. Martha sent me a letter claiming my yard was unsightly and bringing down property values. She issued me a $5,000 fine and told me I had 7 days to rip everything out and replace it with standard green grass, or they would garnish my wages. I tried to talk to her, but she just pointed at her clipboard and said, "Rules are rules. This isn't a jungle." That night, I did some deep research into state laws. I discovered a beautiful legal loophole. Our state has a Right to Forest Act. It says that if a property is officially registered as a certified wildlife habitat, local associations cannot force the owner to remove native plants or use pesticides. I spent the next 3 days filing paperwork and getting my garden certified by the National Wildlife Federation. I even added a small water feature and a bird nesting box to meet the requirements. On the day Martha showed up with a landscaping crew to forcibly clear my yard, I met her at the gate with a smile and a stack of legal documents. I had also installed a massive sign that read, "Official Protected Wildlife Sanctuary." I told her, "Martha, if your crew touches a single leaf, you'll be violating state environmental laws. Also, that $5,000 fine. My lawyer says it's now legally void and constitutes harassment." The look of pure rage on her face was better than any lottery win. Because my yard is now a protected habitat, I never have to mow my lawn again, and the hoer can't do a single thing about it. Now, I spend my mornings drinking coffee on my porch, watching the butterflies while Martha fumes in her perfectly mowed, boring yard. Don't mess with someone who knows how to read the fine print.